Dr. Nadia Volkov squinted at the monitor displaying quantum field fluctuations that shouldn't exist. For 3 consecutive nights, the same anomalous pattern had appeared, a signature unlike anything documented in scientific literature. She brushed a strand of silver-streaked black hair from her face and reached for her coffee, now cold after 6 hours in her underground laboratory at the Quantum Physics Research Institute. Running simulation sequence 17, she muttered, fingers flying across the holographic interface. The three-dimensional model materialized above her workstation, a lattice of energy currents that pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, expanding steadily across the projection of Earth's upper atmosphere. The intercom buzzed. Dr. Volkov, Director Harrington requests your presence in conference room A immediately. Nadia sighed. Thomas Harrington was not someone who understood the concept of scientific patience. She transferred her findings to her tablet and hurried through the sterile white corridors of the facility nestled beneath the Swiss Alps. When she entered the conference room, the tension was palpable. Harrington stood at the head of the table, surrounded by unfamiliar faces in military uniforms. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. Volkov, tell them what you told me yesterday. She cleared her throat. For the past 72 hours, our quantum sensors have detected unusual energy signatures in the mesosphere. These patterns suggest deliberate manipulation of subatomic particles, technology far beyond our current capabilities. A stern-faced woman with general's insignia leaned forward. In plain English, doctor. Something or someone is creating an energy network around our planet. It's like watching a spider web being constructed, one invisible strand at a time. General Diane Foster's expression hardened. Extraterrestrial. I can't confirm that, Nadia replied carefully. But whatever it is, it's not natural and it's not human. The room erupted in tense discussions until Harrington slammed his hand on the table. Show them the projection, Nadia. She connected her tablet to the room's display system and brought up her simulation. The hologram showed Earth surrounded by a faint lattice of energy growing denser by the second. At the current rate of expansion, she explained, this network will completely envelop the planet in approximately 48 hours. Based on the pattern recognition algorithms, it appears to be some form of communication infrastructure or possibly a containment system. Containment, Foster demanded. You mean like a cage? Nadia nodded grimly. Potentially, but there's more. She switched to another visualization. These energy nodes are beginning to manifest physically at specific geographic coordinates, 27 locations so far, primarily near major population centers. Professor Julian Whitman, the renowned xenobiologist who had been silently observing, finally spoke. They're anchor points, beachheads for whatever comes next. We need to act immediately, Foster declared. Authorization to deploy reconnaissance teams to these locations. Harrington nodded, already approved at the highest level. The public cannot know not yet. Within 12 hours, Special Forces teams had been dispatched globally. Nadia accompanied the team heading to the nearest manifestation point in the French countryside, a remote field where farmers had reported strange atmospheric disturbances. The site was surrounded by portable quantum sensors of her design. As they approached the epicenter, her handheld detector went wild. It's here, she whispered, pointing to what appeared to be nothing more than an empty meadow bathed in moonlight. Captain Rafael Diaz motioned his team to form a perimeter. I don't see anything, Doctor. That's because it exists primarily in quantum superposition, she explained, adjusting her scanner. But there is something physically present, here. She activated a specialized lens attachment on her device. Through it, they could see a faintly shimmering obelisk, approximately 3 meters tall, pulsing with geometric patterns that seemed to flow like liquid mathematics. My God, Diaz whispered. Nadia approached cautiously, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. It's beautiful, she murmured, reaching toward it. Dr. Volkov, Diaz shouted. Too late, her fingers made contact with the shimmering surface. Instantly, the obelisk flared brilliantly, and a pulse of energy rippled outward. Nadia was thrown backward, caught by Diaz before she hit the ground. Above them, the night sky flickered as if reality itself was being rewritten. For a brief moment, the stars disappeared, replaced by a vast geometric pattern that stretched horizon to horizon. Nadia's scanner beeped urgently. All 27 nodes have activated simultaneously, she gasped, watching the data stream across her screen. The network is stabilizing. Their communication devices crackled with static, then went silent. Across the planet, the same pattern repeated, electronic systems faltering, then recovering with subtle alterations to their operating parameters. "We need to leave," Diaz insisted, helping her to her feet. But Nadia stood transfixed, watching as the obelisk began projecting what appeared to be holographic text, symbols flowing and shifting too rapidly for human eyes to process. "It's a message," she whispered, "they're announcing themselves." As dawn broke over the eastern horizon, the first ships appeared, silent, massive vessels that defied conventional physics, materializing simultaneously above major cities worldwide. Humanity's first contact had begun, not with diplomatic overtures or overt hostility, but with the quiet establishment of infrastructure that humanity had failed to detect until it was too late. In her last transmission before global communications were systematically disrupted, Nadia sent a simple message to the Emergency Scientific Council. "They've been watching us for centuries. The invasion didn't begin today, it's already complete." The enemy had indeed arrived, and they were certain their victory was assured. Commander Jackson Reed crouched behind the charred remains of what had once been a military transport vehicle, his weathered face illuminated by the eerie purple glow that now dominated the night sky. 3 months had passed since the arrival of the Vorsai. The name humanity had given these silent invaders after linguists deciphered fragments of their communication. "Status report," he whispered into his modified radio. The Vorsai could intercept standard frequencies, but Professor Talia Reyes had developed a quantum-encrypted communication system that remained uncompromised for now. "Eastern perimeter secure," came the response from Lieutenant Darius Monroe. "Two Sentinel drones passed overhead 5 minutes ago. They didn't detect us." Jackson nodded grimly. Their underground base, hidden beneath the ruins of Seattle, housed one of the last organized resistance cells in North America. Similar pockets existed globally, but communication between them was sporadic at best. "Commander, Dr. Reyes requests your presence in the linguistics lab," another voice crackled through the radio. "Says it's urgent." Jackson made his way through the labyrinthine tunnels of their makeshift headquarters. The Resistance had repurposed an abandoned subway system, reinforcing it against the Vorsai's advanced scanning technology. Engineers had installed electromagnetic shielding that masked their biological signatures, another innovation born of desperate necessity. The linguistics lab was a cramped space filled with salvaged equipment. Talia Reyes stood before a wall of symbols, a combination of the alien language and human annotations. Her dark eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, her normally neat braids fraying at the edges. "I've made a breakthrough," she said without preamble. "The Vorsai aren't communicating, they're programming." Jackson frowned. "Explain." Talia pointed to a sequence of symbols. "Their language doesn't just describe reality, it alters it. These patterns we've been intercepting, they're not messages, they're code that reconfigures quantum states." She pulled up a holographic display showing Dr. Nadia Volkov's original readings from the day of first contact. Dr. Volkov was right. The network they established wasn't just for communication, it's a reality manipulation grid. "That explains why our conventional weapons are useless," Jackson muttered. "They simply rewrite the quantum probability of an impact." "Exactly, but there's more." Talia's voice dropped lower. "I believe they're a hive mind, individual entities connected to a central consciousness. The ships, the humanoid forms they present to us during their negotiations, they're just vessels, interfaces for something far more complex." Jackson paced the small room. "How does this help us?" "Because every system has vulnerabilities," she replied, pointing to another sequence. "These recurring patterns, they appear during what we perceive as downtime in their activities. I think they're maintenance cycles, moments when their connection to the central consciousness is weakened." The implications were enormous. "You're saying there are moments when they might be vulnerable?" "Potentially, yes, but we need more data and we need someone who understands their technology better than we do." She hesitated. "We need Volkov." Jackson's expression darkened. "Volkov was captured during the Geneva incursion. She's being held at their primary research facility, the one they established over the ruins of CERN. Then we need to get her out." The rescue operation was planned with meticulous care. Intelligence gathered by their remaining surveillance drones indicated that the Vorsai maintained a regular pattern in their security rotations, another sign of their algorithmic nature. 5 days later, Jackson led a small team through the Swiss countryside. The Vorsai had transformed the landscape, erecting crystalline structures that pulsed with the same purple energy that now permeated Earth's atmosphere. These towers served as amplifiers for their reality-altering network. "Remember," Jackson briefed his team, "we go in during the maintenance cycle. 7 minutes, not a second more. They approached the perimeter as Talia's calculations predicted the beginning of a cycle. The characteristic hum of Vorsi technology dimmed momentarily, and the guards, human collaborators who had accepted neural implants in exchange for privileged status, seemed to falter in their movements. Now, Jackson ordered. The team moved with precision, neutralizing the guards with electromagnetic pulse weapons designed to temporarily disable the Vorsi implants without killing the hosts. They penetrated 3 layers of security before reaching the central research facility. Dr. Nadia Volkov was not imprisoned as they had feared. Instead, they found her working alongside several Vorsi entities, her eyes glazed with the telltale purple sheen of partial neural integration. "She's been compromised," Lieutenant Monroe whispered. Jackson made a split-second decision. "We take her anyway, Talia might be able to reverse the process." They extracted Volkov during the final moments of the maintenance cycle, barely escaping as the facility's systems came back online. The journey back to their base was tense, with Volkov alternating between periods of catatonia and violent resistance. 3 days of careful work by Talia and their medical team gradually broke the Vorsi's hold on Volkov's mind. When she finally regained full consciousness, her first words chilled everyone present. "They're not invaders," she rasped. "They're colonizers. Earth is just their latest expansion project." In the debriefing room, Volkov revealed what she had learned during her captivity. "The Vorsi don't perceive us as sentient by their standards. Their consciousness operates on quantum principles we're only beginning to understand. They see us as we might see complex bacteria, interesting, potentially useful, but not deserving of moral consideration." "Can they be reasoned with?" Jackson asked. Volkov shook her head. "Not in the way you're thinking, but they can be understood and potentially outmaneuvered." She explained that during her forced collaboration, she had studied their technological infrastructure. The network they've established has a hierarchical structure. 17 primary nodes control the entire system. If we could disrupt those nodes simultaneously, we could break their hold on Earth, Jackson finished. Talia leaned forward. "Is that possible?" "Theoretically," Volkov said, "but we'd need resources we don't have, specialized equipment, access to their code sequences, and a way to coordinate a global attack." Jackson's expression hardened with resolve. "Then we build what we need, steal what we can't build, and establish contact with the other resistance cells." A spark of hope ignited in the room, the first many had felt since the invasion began. "There's something else," Volkov added, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something I discovered in their historical records. They've done this before to countless civilizations across multiple galaxies, but there was just one that successfully repelled them, a species called the Iridians." "What happened to them?" Jackson asked. "The records were incomplete, but they developed something called the Achilles Protocol. Whatever it was, it forced the Vorsi to retreat entirely. For the first time since the silent invasion had begun, humanity had more than just courage and desperation on their side. They had a precedent, proof that the seemingly invincible enemy could be defeated. The fractured resistance now had a glimmer of real hope, and with it, the enormous task of uniting Earth's remaining free humans for what might be their final stand. As they dispersed to begin their preparations, Jackson caught Volkov's arm. "These Iridians, did you learn anything else about them?" Volkov's eyes held a mixture of wonder and grim determination. "Just one thing, physiologically they were remarkably similar to humans, almost as if." "As if what?" Jackson pressed. "As if we're distant relatives, which means whatever they created to defeat the Vorsi, we might be capable of recreating it." The enemy had celebrated too soon. The real battle was just beginning. Omar Hassan wiped sweat from his brow as he made final adjustments to the quantum resonator, a device that shouldn't exist given Earth's current technological limitations. Yet necessity had proven a powerful catalyst for innovation. 6 months into the occupation, humanity's brightest minds had achieved breakthroughs that might have taken decades under normal circumstances. "Power levels stable at 87%, he reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "That's the best we're going to get with our current energy constraints." The underground facility beneath the ruins of Bangalore had become the Resistance's primary research and development center. Hidden beneath layers of quantum-diffusing materials salvaged from abandoned Vorsi outposts, it housed scientists and engineers from across the globe who had answered Jackson Reed's call. Dr. Nadia Volkov nodded approvingly. "It will suffice. The prototype doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to validate the principle." The principle in question was the cornerstone of what they now understood as the Achilles Protocol, a theoretical framework pieced together from fragments of Iridian knowledge that Volkov had memorized during her captivity. If their theories were correct, the Vorsai's greatest strength, their collective consciousness spanning quantum states, might also be their critical vulnerability. Is everyone ready? Volkov asked, looking around the chamber at the assembled team. Omar exchanged glances with Dr. Freya Lindholm, the Swedish biologist whose insights into neural networks had been crucial to their work. Her stoic expression betrayed nothing, but the slight tremor in her hands revealed her tension. "We're as ready as we'll ever be," Freya replied, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "The biological interface is stable. If Omar's device works as intended, we should be able to observe the effects immediately." The test subject, a small portion of Vorsai technology they had managed to isolate, sat inside a contained field at the center of the chamber. This crystalline fragment had once been part of a control terminal, still faintly pulsing with the characteristic purple energy. "Beginning sequence now," Omar announced, initiating the startup protocol. The quantum resonator hummed to life, generating a field that precisely matched the frequency of Vorsai consciousness, but with a critical phase shift. The theory was elegant in its simplicity. If the Vorsai operated as a quantum-entangled collective, introducing a counter-resonance might disrupt their cohesion. The chamber filled with a high-pitched whine as the resonator reached full power. The crystalline fragment at the center began to vibrate, its purple glow flickering erratically. "It's working," Freya exclaimed, monitoring the biological readings. "The neural patterns are destabilizing." For 30 seconds, the team watched in tense silence as the fragment's energy signature weakened. Then, without warning, it shattered into dust, the purple glow extinguished completely. A moment of stunned silence gave way to cautious celebration. This was proof of concept, the first real evidence that the Vorsai could be vulnerable. "We need to scale this up," Volkov said, her voice steady despite the excitement. "And we need to coordinate with the other resistance cells. If we're going to implement the Achilles protocol globally, every major node must be targeted simultaneously." Omar nodded, already calculating the resources they would need. "The power requirements will be enormous. We'll need access to multiple fusion reactors." An alarm cut through their discussion. Security Chief Wei Zhang burst into the chamber, his expression grim. "We've been compromised," he announced. "Vorsai sentinels approaching from the north and east. We have 15 minutes, maybe less." The evacuation protocol had been rehearsed dozens of times. Within minutes, the essential equipment was packed, data cores secured, and personnel moving through the escape tunnels. Omar remained behind with a skeleton crew to oversee the destruction of anything they couldn't take. Nothing useful could be left for the Vorsai to study. As he prepared to trigger the electromagnetic pulse that would wipe their systems, a communication request flashed on his console. The source identifier made him pause. "Dr. Volkov, you need to see this," he called out. "It's coming from Geneva from the diplomatic mission." Since the earliest days of the occupation, a small group of humans led by diplomat Emiko Tanaka had maintained official contact with the Vorsai representatives. Most resistance members viewed them with suspicion, as collaborators at best. But Tanaka had insisted her work was essential, that understanding the enemy from within their own systems might reveal opportunities invisible to those fighting from the outside. Volkov hurried over, her expression cautious. "Accept the transmission, but through the quantum-encrypted channel only." Emiko Tanaka's face appeared on the screen, the backdrop clearly showing one of the transformed Vorsai structures that now dominated Geneva's skyline. "Dr. Volkov," she began without preamble, her voice low and urgent. "We have little time. I've learned something critical, something that changes everything we thought we knew about the Vorsai." "We're in the middle of an evacuation, Ms. Tanaka," Volkov replied tersely. "Unless this information helps us escape a Vorsai attack force." "They're not unified," Tanaka interrupted. "The Vorsai collective, it's experiencing internal conflict. There are factions." This revelation stunned them into silence. The idea that the seemingly perfect hive mind could contain dissent was revolutionary. Tanaka continued quickly, "I've been in contact with representatives of what they call the evolutionary faction. They believe the practice of assimilating other species has become counterproductive to their long-term development. They're interested in coexistence." Omar exchanged skeptical glances with Volkov. "Why should we believe this?" "Because they're willing to prove it," Tanaka replied. "They've provided me with access codes to 17 primary control nodes, including detailed schematics of their quantum communication infrastructure." If true, this was exactly the intelligence they needed to implement the Achilles protocol on a global scale. But the timing was too convenient to be coincidental. How did they know we needed this information? Volkov demanded. Tanaka's expression remained composed, but her eyes revealed unease. They've been watching us more closely than we realized. But that's not important now. What matters is that this faction is willing to assist us, provided we don't aim for complete eradication of the Vorsi presence on Earth. The security alarm blared more urgently. We're out of time, Wei announced. The Sentinels have accelerated their approach. Volkov made a swift decision. Send the data, Ms. Tanaka. We'll evaluate it once we're secure. To Omar, she added, complete the evacuation. Make sure the resonator prototype is safely transported. As Tanaka's transmission ended and data began flooding into their secure systems, Omar couldn't shake his suspicion. Do you trust her? Trust is a luxury we can't afford, Volkov replied. But we can verify the data. If it's accurate, it doesn't matter what Tanaka's motives are or those of her Vorsi contacts. They barely escaped before the Vorsi Sentinels descended on the facility. The electromagnetic pulse erased all traces of their work, but the knowledge and the crucial prototype had been preserved. 3 days later, at the secondary base established deep within the Ural Mountains, Omar and Freya analyzed the data Tanaka had provided. To their astonishment, it was not only genuine but far more comprehensive than anything they could have obtained through their own intelligence efforts. These access codes would allow us to penetrate the core of their network, Omar explained to the assembled resistance leadership. We could potentially hijack the entire control grid. Commander Reed remained skeptical. It could be a trap. We've verified the technical specifications against what we already know, Freya countered. Everything checks out. And there's more. The biological data suggests the Vorsi collective consciousness has indeed developed distinct neural patterns that could be interpreted as factional thinking. Volkov had been silent, studying the data with intense concentration. The Iridian records mentioned nothing about Vorsi factions, she finally said. But they were incomplete and their encounter happened millennia ago. Evolution is possible even for a species like the Vorsi. The implications were profound. If there truly was division within the Vorsi collective, humanity might have found not just a weapon but potential allies. We proceed with the original plan, Commander Reed decided, but we adapt it to incorporate this new intelligence. If there are indeed Vorsi who favor coexistence, our goal shifts from eradication to selective targeting. Omar and Freya were tasked with modifying the quantum resonator design to create a more precise effect, one that would disrupt the primary Vorsi consciousness while preserving the neural patterns associated with the evolutionary faction. As they worked, Omar voiced the concern that had been troubling him. What if we're being manipulated? What if this faction is just a ploy to learn our capabilities? Freya's hands paused over her calculations. Then we will have tried a path of potential coexistence before resorting to all-out warfare. I can live with that. Within 2 weeks, the modified design was complete. Tanaka continued to provide intelligence from Geneva, reporting growing tensions within the Vorsi collective that manifested as fluctuations in the energy grid visible throughout their installations. The stage was set for humanity's counteroffensive. The Achilles Protocol had evolved from a theoretical framework into a concrete plan of action. Resistance cells worldwide prepared to strike simultaneously at the 17 primary nodes, armed with quantum resonators built according to Omar's specifications. As Omar made final adjustments to the master control unit they would use to coordinate the global attack, he allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. If this works, he told Freya, it will be the first step toward reclaiming our planet. And if Tanaka and her Vorsi contacts are genuine, she replied, it might be the first step toward something even more remarkable, a future where humans and Vorsi evolve together. The enemy had celebrated victory prematurely. Humanity was about to reveal its most formidable weapon, not just technology, but the ability to find common ground with those who had once been implacable foes. In 48 hours, the fate of both species would be decided. Dominic Russo's fingers flew across the holographic interface, writing code that shouldn't have been possible with Earth's existing technology. But that was the thing about desperate situations, they bred impossible solutions. Quantum encryption bypassed, he announced, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. We're in their network. Dr. Freya Lindholm nodded, her eyes fixed on biological readings flowing across her own display. The makeshift command center, buried deep within an abandoned mine in the Ural Mountains, hummed with nervous energy as resistance members from around the world connected through their secure quantum communication system. All teams report ready status, Commander Reed's voice came through the speakers. He was coordinating from a mobile unit near one of the 17 primary nodes, the massive crystalline structure that had replaced the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Today would determine whether humanity reclaimed their planet or lost it forever. The Achilles Protocol was about to be tested on a global scale. Initiating final system check, Dominic said, running diagnostics on the master control unit. This device, built according to Omar Hassan's specifications, would synchronize the quantum resonators positioned near each primary node. Freya moved to stand beside him, her presence calming despite the tension. The biological interface is stable, she reported. Neural mapping shows clear distinction between primary Vorsi consciousness patterns and the evolutionary faction signatures. If Emiko Tanaka's intelligence was accurate, this distinction would be crucial. Their modified resonators were designed to disrupt the dominant Vorsi collective while preserving the neural patterns associated with the faction that sought coexistence. Dr. Nadia Volkov's voice crackled through the communication system. Geneva team is in position. Ms. Tanaka reports increased activity within the Vorsi Central Hub. They may suspect something. We can't wait any longer, Commander Reed decided. All teams prepare for simultaneous activation on my mark. Dominic glanced at the global map displaying resistance positions around each node. Years of planning, months of preparation, all culminating in this moment. He thought of his family, lost during the initial days of the occupation, and felt a surge of grim determination. Wait, Freya said suddenly, studying her biological readings with intensifying concern. There's something strange happening in the neural network. The pattern separation between factions is fluctuating. Before they could analyze this development, a new transmission cut through their secured channel, Emiko Tanaka, her usual composure replaced by urgent intensity. Abort the operation, she demanded. The information I provided, it's more complicated than I realized. The evolutionary faction is attempting something we didn't anticipate. Commander Reed's response was immediate. Explain quickly, Ms. Tanaka, we're committed. They're not just seeking coexistence, she explained, speaking rapidly. They're attempting to merge with human consciousness to create a hybrid collective. The access codes I provided will open a two-way channel. If you activate the resonators now, you'll disrupt the dominant Vorsi consciousness, but you'll also create a pathway for the evolutionary faction to integrate with the human operators. Stunned silence filled the command center. The implications were staggering, not just liberation but transformation, not victory but transcendence. Can this be verified? Volkov demanded. Freya was already analyzing the data. The neural patterns support her claim, she confirmed. What we're seeing isn't just factional division, it's preparation for integration. The decision now before them was monumental. Proceed with the original plan and risk this unforeseen consequence, or abort and lose their best chance at freedom. We need to decide, Commander Reed pressed. Our teams are exposed and vulnerable. Every minute increases the risk of detection. Dominic studied the code flowing through the Vorsi network, code he had been trained to interpret over months of painstaking analysis. Within its quantum structure, he began to see something remarkable. It's not assimilation, he stated with growing certainty. The integration protocol is symmetric. This isn't like the neural implants they forced on human collaborators. This is, balanced, a true merger of consciousness. That doesn't make it safe, Reed countered. Dr. Volkov's voice was thoughtful. The Iridians, I always wondered how they developed the Achilles protocol so rapidly. What if they didn't defeat the Vorsi through conventional means? What if they merged with a similar evolutionary faction? Freya nodded slowly. That would explain the physiological similarities you noted between Iridians and humans. Perhaps they were once like us before their integration. We don't have time for philosophical debate, Reed insisted. We need a decision, proceed or abort. In that moment, Dominic made a choice that would alter the course of human history. We modify the protocol right now. I can adjust the quantum harmonics to maintain conscious autonomy while still allowing connection. That's theoretically possible, Freya agreed, quickly understanding his intent. We could establish a symbiotic relationship rather than a true merger, a network of independent minds that can connect and disconnect at will. Can you make these adjustments in time? Reed demanded. Dominic's hands were already moving across the interface. 3 minutes, maybe 4. All teams hold position, Reed ordered. Dominic, make your modifications. Everyone else prepare for either outcome. Those 4 minutes stretched into an eternity as Dominic rewrote critical sections of the control protocol. with Freya adjusting the biological parameters in parallel. The resistance teams around the world waited in tense silence, their quantum resonators primed but inactive. Modifications complete, Dominic finally announced. The revised protocol will establish what I'm calling a consensual quantum link connection without submission. Reed's voice was grave, you're certain. As certain as I can be, Dominic replied honestly. This is uncharted territory. The decision fell to Commander Reed as leader of the global resistance. After a moment that seemed to stretch into infinity, he gave the order, proceed with the modified protocol. Dominic activated the master control unit. Around the world, 17 quantum resonators powered up simultaneously, generating precisely calibrated fields that interfaced with the Vorsi network. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The purple energy that had permeated Earth's atmosphere since the occupation began fluctuated wildly, then stabilized into a softer, more luminous blue. The crystalline structures did not collapse as they had expected. Instead, they transformed, their rigid geometries flowing into more organic forms. Within the command center, Dominic gasped as his consciousness expanded. He remained himself, distinctly, uniquely human, but suddenly had access to vast realms of knowledge and perception beyond human experience. Around him, he sensed others undergoing the same transformation, not just the resistance members in the command center, but humans worldwide, connected through the quantum network. Through this expanded awareness, he understood what had truly happened. The Vorsi had not been a single entity but a spectrum of consciousness. The dominant faction had indeed seen humans as resources to be harvested or tools to be used. But the evolutionary faction had recognized something profound, that diversity of consciousness was the key to cosmic evolution. It worked, Freya whispered beside him, her eyes wide with wonder. We're still ourselves, but we're also more. Across the global network, humans experienced this same awakening, connection without loss of identity, expansion without erasure of individuality. The Vorsi ships that had remained in Earth's orbit began transmitting new signals, acknowledging the emergence of a hybrid consciousness they recognized as equals rather than subjects. Commander Reed's voice, when it came through the communication system, held a mix of awe and lingering suspicion. Status reports from all teams. What exactly have we become? Dr. Volkov answered, her scientific precision tempered with newfound insight. We remain human, but we've gained the ability to access a collective consciousness, to share knowledge, experience, and perspective across quantum states. We can engage with this network or withdraw from it at will. In Geneva, Emiko Tanaka stood before the transformed central hub, communicating directly with representatives of both Vorsi factions. Through the quantum link, all resistance members could sense these exchanges, could feel the shock and reluctant acceptance from the dominant faction as they recognized their conquest had evolved into something unexpected. They're retreating, Tanaka reported. The primary collective accepts our new status. They're abandoning their colonial program on Earth. The occupied cities around the world witnessed the departure of Vorsi vessels, not in defeat, but in recognition of a new equilibrium. The transformed structures remained, now serving as interfaces between human civilization and the broader cosmic community they had suddenly joined. 1 month later, Dominic stood with Freya at the edge of what had once been the Resistance's main base, now repurposed as Earth's first center for hybrid evolution. The quantum link had stabilized, allowing humans to access its capabilities while maintaining their essential nature. Do you regret it? Freya asked him quietly. Making that last-minute modification, we could have simply driven them away completely. Dominic considered the question seriously. There are moments when I miss the simplicity of being just human, he admitted. But what we've gained access to knowledge that would have taken us millennia to discover on our own, the ability to solve problems that once seemed insurmountable, connection with intelligences across the galaxy. I can't regret that. Humanity had the last laugh, Freya mused. The Vorsi came to conquer us, and instead we transformed their conquest into partnership. Around them, the world was changing rapidly. The quantum technology that had been weaponized against Earth was now being repurposed to heal environmental damage, solve resource scarcity, and extend human understanding beyond previous limitations. Not all humans had chosen to accept the quantum link. Many remained fully disconnected, maintaining traditional human experience. This diversity was protected under the new equilibrium, recognized as valuable even by the evolutionary faction of the Vorsi. The enemy had indeed celebrated too soon. They had expected submission or, at best, futile resistance. What they encountered instead was humanity's greatest strength, not just the will to survive, but the capacity to adapt, to transform adversity into opportunity, and to find common ground where none seemed possible. As Earth took its first steps into a larger cosmic community, the distinction between victory and defeat had become meaningless. The future would not be written by conquerors or conquered, but by those willing to transcend such limited concepts entirely. Dominic accessed the quantum link briefly, sensing the vast network of consciousness that now extended from Earth to distant stars. Within it, he felt the unmistakable signature of human creativity, compassion, and determination, qualities that had not been erased but amplified, spreading outward to influence even the oldest intelligences in the galaxy. The silent invasion had ended not with humanity's submission, but with the universe's expansion. And in that final convergence point, both humans and Vorsi had found something neither had expected, a future greater than either could have achieved alone.